Today we're talking about probability, specifically the probability of an event occurring. If we jump right into it, the definition of probability of an event is the measure of the likelihood that the event will occur in the future, right? It is always a number between 0 and 1, and probability can be expressed as a fraction, as a decimal, a percent, or as odds. So we often see probability reflected in one of these four ways: a fraction, a decimal, percent, or as odds. We see some of those examples down here below, right? The first two are more or less odds. The first one is kind of a ratio. The probability of an event happening is 1 to 4. Odds are also reflected using the term in. So we have, this event might happen 1 in 4 times. Down here we have a fraction, 1 over 4. So that's another way that we can express probability of an event. 0.25, there's our decimal. And last but not least, I converted that decimal to a percent, 25%. You'll notice that in all of these examples, we're using the same measure. Each of these reflects a probability of 1 to 4, 1 in 4, 1/4, or 25%. They're all equal probability. I just kind of went through and showed you all the different ways in which you can write it. So in the example, if you were to be shooting a free throw in basketball, right, and your free throw percentage was 25%. You made a free throw successfully 25% of the time. Well, you probably wouldn't really be a good free throw shooter, but that's not the point. The point is, what we could say is you make 1 in 4 free throws. Or you will have a successful make every 1 out of 4 attempts, right? So there's a variety of different ways that we can talk about the probability of an event happening, how often we think something's going to happen. Calculating probability is kind of the next section over here in the illustration mnemonic section, which we'll just chat about briefly. You guys will be calculating probability this year, and I have a quick, short little phrase mnemonic to help you remember that. And the way that we understand probability is that it equals the number of desired outcomes over the number of possible outcomes. Again, this is going to take some practice with you understanding word problems and problems that you're given. But a quick way to just remember that probability equals desired outcomes over possible outcomes is using this phrase mnemonic, PDP. Probability, P, equals desired outcomes, D over possible outcomes, PDP. So if we're wondering how I calculated, Joe Schmo's free throw percentage, well, let's just say that I, went into his stat book and discovered this year that he had taken 100 free throws, right? So I take my probability equals desired outcomes, D, over possible outcomes, right? I had noticed in Joey Schmo's stat line that he had taken 100 free throws. He had 100 possible free throws. And out of that, he had hit 25 of them. Right? In this case, 25 divided by 100, that probability equals 0.25, right? Which I can convert to a percent if I'd like. You can just move that decimal place 2 spots, turn it into a percent. So the probability of Mr. Schmo hitting a free throw was 25% of the time. So that's probability. Remember PDP. Probability equals desired outcome over possible outcomes. PDP will help you figure out probability of an event occurring.